neurofeedback is presented as being something that you can use as a treatment or a therapeutic protocol for mental health issues, depression, the mental health issues that come along with age-related cognitive decline, as well as ADHD and even trauma. And I'm wondering if you could give us a larger sense of why and how neurofeedback can be effective for treating these conditions. I think maybe you kind of just did, but specific to from like a mental health therapy standpoint. Yeah.
Yeah. So when I look at mental health, I look at it very much along the lines of adaptive responses. The DSM has been helpful in giving us frameworks to understand this spectrum that people can kind of traverse. But as neuroscience is moving forward, and even the NIMH is starting to say, hey, we need to look deeper with these classifications to understand what are the deeper underpinnings there. And so more generally, and I really got this from my friend, Raphael, who Lancelota, and his therapy practice is called Habituating to Wholeness. And I love that title because, we habituate to our environment. So when I meet with clients, I want to understand, and I think you had referenced this before, this narrative, like, how did you get to where you are? What were the situations and experiences that you had in your life that led you to a place of needing to either, kind of shut down to feel good or to be really vigilant and activated in order to feel safe? So people we have a variety of temperaments. One way I had this described to me was by a friend who said that an Anishinaabe elder had taught him this, where we have in the river, there's the rocks, the water, and the bubbles that dance on top. And people's temperament tends to fall along that spectrum. So the bubble dancers are the little more of the activated, kind of happy, joyous people. I'm one of the bubbly people for sure. The watery people tend to be, they just kind of go with the flow. They're kind of even keel. They can go this way or that way. And we've got our more like rock, like the Buddha types that you kind of just go sit beside to feel grounded and calm. But you still need to have the ability to move through that spectrum overall. So if you're a rock, to avoid, the activation, because maybe as a child, your household was really chaotic and busy all the time. And so you learn to kind of dissociate, to get away from all this energy, the yelling, the screaming, different things that were going on. Now it's not a temperament anymore, or maybe your temperament was to be a rock, but then that's what led you to idle and lockdown in that area and to cope by shutting down, because activation was never something that was taught as a safe place or an exciting experience or a nourishing experience. And the same for children, sometimes who are more on the activated end. If they grew up in a similar environment, they may have learned to always be on guard and be prepared so that they could catch it and never get in trouble and never get yelled at, and make sure or be really perfect so that they could traverse their environment. Both of those are really adaptive responses. The trouble I have is when we get into pathologizing, sometimes through diagnostics, is saying this is a disorder. That's not a disorder. That's a habituation. And I want to understand why your nervous system came to the place to use energy in that way. And I find when I do this with clients, they start to get insight into, why does my nervous system work this way? What might my underlying temperament be? But then I call it emotional cardio, meaning can I start to move from this fixed tight place to opening up and learning to be in intimacy? Or can I learn to be from this really quiet, closed place and open up once in a while to play and explore the safety that falls within this region of our overall nervous system experience? And so with the technology, I can help clients sense, it was dangerous to calm down. Like that threatens survival. And so how do you ever get to that place if you're not getting a reward that's actually okay, and someone discussing it with you that this is a new relational task, if we're progressively overloading your nervous system into a new experience of a state that you just don't have a healthy relationship with.
So
that makes sense.
it does make sense. I mean, at the end there, I was starting to wonder, if I didn't know you were talking about neurofeedback, it would just sound like you were talking about psychotherapy. And then you have this technological augmentation to the process that directly supports that sort of like reward guidance sort of thing through a very neurophysiological feedback mechanism. Yeah. And so it's almost like utilizing a technological augment in combination with an actual person in the room to facilitate the type of co-regulation and nervous system remapping necessary to affectively exist in a way that is more more coherent with a healthy person in the world, being a healthy person in the world, individually, relationally, and socially. Is that kind of fair?
100%. The way my supervisor described it when I first started working at the clinic, and she brought neurofeedback in, she's like, it's almost like we send clients to you and it's like they were a little bud and then they just start to blossom. And I say it's like their fragrance starts to emerge. So people just start to open up to the boundaries of who they are. They're not just staying closed anymore. They feel like they can finally stretch into themselves and start to embody themselves. And so, there's lots of therapies, especially somatic therapies that allow people to do this. But coming from a trauma lab where we were just studying, how do you help someone who's in such a dissociative state, in such a traumatized state, where current modalities are not helping them? We have found that through the use of technology, we can start to awaken them a little bit. We can give them that gentle nudge and also the reward to let them know that it's safe, because the interpersonal reaction has never been safe. They just don't have a foundation for that. So when you have this, third party technology objective measure, it makes it a little bit easier to challenge and to also bypass like the ego formations that have been put in place that the therapist just sounds like wah, 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 because they don't have higher order prefrontal activation if you're in this highly vigilant state. So we kind of bypass and just speak directly to the nervous system. And as the nervous system gets reward through sound, through haptics, it starts to get this sense of felt safety and some relaxation happens. So the body will relax, but then the ego will go, oh, what? And so clients will get activated. There's a real thing called relaxation-induced anxiety, where if a client has been in a certain state for a very long time, when you start moving their nervous system out of that, they fight it. So even with therapy, people will fight it. So when I can work with them and have the tech and say, this is progressive overload, this is gym training, this is cardio, it's going to be uncomfortable. But I also want to make it, I don't want to overtrain you. So it just gives us that fine line to start rocking them out of those grooves that they're stuck in.
Interesting. When you said that relaxation-induced anxiety, I'd love to talk a little bit about ADHD. I mean, the stuff that you're talking about here, healing from trauma. Okay, from trauma, we can attach that to, like acute shock trauma of events that have happened, car accidents, assault, etc., all the way back to long-term trauma that is rooted in a person's identity through their developmental trauma, complex trauma, sort of like working with the same sort of mechanisms, just addressing each thing slightly differently based on what they are. But I'm thinking now about, and that all of those things would present as the symptoms that are then classified as categorical mental illnesses, depression, PTSD, OCD, etc. And that there's neurological and psychological sort of interminglings of those two, and trying to figure out which needs what in what ways to sort of move towards the type of healthy life that you're maybe going for in therapy. If you enjoyed this clip, please check out the full interview linked here. You could also check out more interviews like this one at our main channel, Adventures Through the Mind, also linked here. Of course, please subscribe to the channel here at Mind Clips and hit the little bell to make sure that you have notifications for every time a new clip is released. Thanks.